Hey, welcome to Smoker Broker. I'm Robert Mesh, and I'm the guy they call Smoker Broker. Man, it's been a long time. I think we've gone almost 4 or 5 months where we hadn't done a podcast. And, for pretty much the last 5 or so years, that's been a religious thing for us, at least twice or so a month. So it's nice to be back. It's something we enjoy doing. You get into habits, and habits can be good and bad. I didn't even realize it had been 4 or 5 months until I was talking to our producer there, and lo and behold, it has been. So it's kind of funny. You take a couple of weeks off, and then things come up, and you don't put your schedule back in, and next thing you know, 4 or 5 months passes by. Which that's why a lot of times I'll talk about habits being good or bad. It goes both ways. You start doing things lackadaisically, or you don't, do them all the time. Next thing you know, time passes, and you got to start back all over again. So it's interesting how that stuff works. And good habits too. Good habits are repeated. People who start drinking water and they start doing it more often, it's on their minds, and they start doing it all the
Fireball.
time. Yeah, right. That's certainly not me. I'm clearly not the one that has that type of habit. But it is funny how time just passes by. I saw someone post yesterday. Something about procrastination being like, just, it's the worst. It's not like blaming somebody else or why hasn't it been done. They say it's usually the procrastination of you not doing anything about it. And I was thinking about that this morning, and I think about all the tasks I have and list I have for myself, not the ones that Dina created, and I started realizing, I go, this is me. I go, that's the problem. I just sit there and I go, well, we'll get to it. I'm like, well, if you don't do anything, it's not going to get done. So even I really need to start looking more at that. But nonetheless, it is good to be back. It is something we enjoy doing. We have a lot of people that look out for our podcast and watch the educational piece of it, because that's typically what we're doing here. We're talking about things that you don't read out of a book. There are things that are happening in the industry right now. And almost every time it's going to be something that is helpful for you. Today, we're going to be talking about probably the biggest topic over the last year. And it's probably fitting that we've been off for a few months because it's really inundated us with what we're doing. But the interest rate really holds the court in all the conversations right now in real estate. And the unfortunate part is it's the one that rules it, and it really shouldn't, because it's a miscommunicated topic. The general public really struggles with understanding what the interest rate is and does, how high or how low, if it's affected by, how much you put down, what are your daily habits and spending. It's all, kind of a moot point if you really look at everything overall that you're doing. And we've got a massive piece of the general public right now that the one fixation is the obvious, is that the rate's higher because it's been like that for 15 years. And it's hard to re-educate a general public once they get into, like we were talking about, habits. They get into habits. They expect their interest rate at 3.5% or 4%. We've had people, the rate has been so low for so long that we have first-time home buyers who have lived their entire life and they have never seen a rate over 5%. And y'all, if you put that in perspective, that's kind of overwhelming for someone who's at, 19 or so, to be told, rates are normally 8 or 9% historically. They're just like you. They think you're, on drugs or something, or that you're stupid, or just screwing with them. They just don't realize it. But the truth is, an 8% to a 9% interest rate is actually a healthy market historically. Honestly, there are some people who would argue a 10% interest rate is not the worst of things. So we have a general public right now who is fixed on the fact that they think a fixed interest rate should be below 6. And quite honestly, that's just not reality right now. And we don't see a change into where that goes lower. We'll see a bump. We have an election year coming up, so you're going to see a bump in the rates. And I'm going to introduce my friends over here, they're the ones that really guide with the expertise of the show, especially our buddy over there, Phil Goff, who's a really good lender. But I'm going to let him give his perspective here in a minute on where that rate goes, because all of us have different opinions. But we all settle upon the fact that in an election year, it's going to bump down because they want the economy. People are more optimistic about things, and that rate will come down. The problem is it's not going to go below 6 most likely. And even if it does go down, it's going to be a temporary at best. We still all believe we kind of stay between 6 and 8 for a long time now. But I'll let Phil give his input on that. He knows a lot more about those rates than I do. As always, I bring my guys along with me. They're the ones that run SWR. They're the ones that really are out there day to day and know the stuff a lot better than I do. Got my buddy down there, Mike Dellis, longtime friend. He's super smart. Doesn't look so much so smart, but he is. He's a smart guy, good guy. Love having him around. Love his perspective. Probably about the driest humor I've ever met in my entire life, and I love him for it. Then I got my buddy down there, Brent Holberg. He's the real boss of SWR. He's the director of operations of SWR, and he's the one behind the scenes, really, who makes the wheels go around and really keeps me in check too. Got my other buddy down there, Gary Ritchie, my longtime friend and longtime mentor. Good teaching buddy with me. Showed me how to teach years ago. Filled with expertise in construction and real estate, and his input is just vital anytime we do these shows. And then I got my buddy over here, Phil Goff. He's one of our preferred lenders and does a lot of stuff for us, and he's become a good friend too. So we enjoy having him around, and we definitely wanted to have him on this particular episode because it really does focus around what he's doing day to day. So Phil, with that, I started with the interest rate and the obvious. Give them a little bit of background, what you see right now, what you think, whether it's right or wrong. We don't have a crystal ball, but what is it that you see, and we'll kind of dig that conversation from there.
I think for me, everything hinges on one particular word, which is expectation. And I think you see that with the Federal Reserve and how they deal with the rate. I feel like when we were looking at things, we as a whole lending community, say in May, we were seeing some positive movement. We were saying, hey, inflation looks like it's coming down. There's been some good stuff happen since then. Car prices, like probably the single highest inflationary thing we've ever seen is a used car being sold for as much as a new car all of a sudden for like a whole year. That started backing off. Rents, even though they feel really high, started trending downward. But even with all that, the Federal Reserve's expectation is that inflation would be down into the 2% range. So even though we're making headway, all of us are looking at this saying, hey, things are getting better. The interest rate should start coming down. But for them, their expectation, based on something Greenspan, for the younger audience doesn't know who that is, the older audience, but something he decided
on here, she'd be like, who the hell is that? I don't know.
Right, pretty much, right. Brent, Alan Greenspan was in the 80s.
Thank you. He was there for a while.
He just crossed 40. He has some understanding.
Right.
No, I've got a week to go. Hey,
you're not there yet. It's not official. My
No.
God, we've been celebrating your birthday for a month now. This is ridiculous.
Funny.
That's how he wants it. But so their expectation is inflation will drop down to 2%. So as long as they're under that impression, for a lot of us in lending, we think that's kind of like, oh, if all things were perfect, it would be at 2%. That's not necessarily the reality. And as long as that's not the reality, but that's their expectation, then it's going to be a thorn in everyone's side.
Phil, the funny part about the, you mentioned something that Gary Keller talks to us about in private quite a bit. In fact, sometimes I'm like, God, enough with the inflation and because he talks about it a lot. But it's interesting you discuss the expectation of the Fed and, a very scary reality of the federal government is that they can pretty much do what they want with the financial tools of this country. If they want the country to go into a downspin, they can do it. If they want them to go in an upswing, they can do it. And you're right. It's like they play good cop, bad cop. The Fed goes, well, we expect this and that. They know damn good and well all it takes is for the president to go in there and say, look, this needs to come down and it needs to come down until the dollar's risen back to where it has actual meaning and it's not monopoly money. And no matter what it takes, we're going to do it. And it's like the biggest threat to the population as a whole. They just don't realize that it can happen. So I love how you said that, because that is what the Fed does. They put an expectation out there and they're saying, well, this is what we hope. They know they can control it, but they also want the people to think that they're having some say in what's happening. And it's really not the truth. They really can control it, but that is what they watch.
Yeah, for sure. It's annoying because I think we all see positive signs.
Yeah.
But like you said, in the end, there's one person that controls things, and it's not me, and it's no lender. And unfortunately, it's the guy sitting on the Fed Reserve Board, and they make all the choices, no matter what we all see and no matter what we all say every day. I do agree with you. The idea has been with an election year coming, no matter which way it goes, generally we do see rates drop.
Yeah.
But again, in May, we were telling people by the end of the year, we felt like rates would be in the 6.5 range probably. And, today, what are they? I think the average rate's at least 7.5. It might be. What's that?
So you lied to us.
I did. I lied. I find that I lie a lot when I try to, use my crystal ball. It's just not.
Well, you still got time. I actually predicted it was 7.5 to 8. So I'm right now, but it's not the end of the year. And there are some signals that maybe they do try to back off of it. I think they're personally scared when, even though they know 7 and 8 is historically okay, I think even they worry that if the public sees it cross 8, they'll start being like, oh my God, why are we at 8%? Where is this going? And this is one big takeaway that I want for everybody today from this particular show. The interest rate for anybody who waits, you've heard this from a lot of people, especially real estate agents, that, if you wait, or not from we're telling you that it's not a matter of you waiting, hoping that it'll go lower. A lot of you are doing that right now. Like, it'll go lower. Well, y'all, there's another side to that. It can go higher. And betting people, Brent's in Vegas. He doesn't bet, but if he was, he would go put a lot of money right now that it goes up before it goes down. Now, not temporarily. I agree with Phil. I think it drops a little bit, but I think we are looking at a 7 to 8% interest rate for the next 2 years or so. I just don't see any way around it. I mean, it's almost like we have to get back to that at some point. And I think that you have people that are sitting there, I'm just going to wait. I'm like, you wait too long, it's going to go the other way. And then you'll really never be more sorry, because you're sitting there going, oh, I missed the window that it's too low. I'm like, well, now you're going to miss the window that's way too high. And it is a problem. So it goes both ways. It's funny how everybody always focuses on, no, it'll go down. I'm like, it's funny for a society that's not really optimistic. They sure as hell are optimistic about the interest rate going lower versus it going higher. Most of a negative or a pessimistic society, which we usually have, you think they would go the other way. Oh, it's going to keep rising. They don't do that, though.
Oh, and I think if you look at it from a pessimistic standpoint, the only way that the rates really truly drop significantly is obviously inflation has to be under control, and if the job market just tanks, right? Because they're going to want to spur growth.
So,
and if the job market tanks, those people that think that, oh, I'm going to, wait and get that rate, well, maybe they don't have their job then, right? So, it's not a good thing necessarily if the rate drops that quickly. There's usually a big problem that causes it.
That's right. Yeah, you don't want volatile interest rates. That is not vindictive of a capitalistic society where it's free and people, that's just not something you want. And thankfully, we're usually not like that over the years. Now, you said something that I actually brought up the other day to the higher ups, because I just don't understand the phenomenon. And, Phil, you can jump in, and, maybe even you, Gary, too, can jump in on this, because you've seen this several times. I don't know how we have such a good unemployment number right now, when all I hear is that someone's downsized, condensed. I hear, well, they've removed those jobs. I had a good friend the other day from a massive company, tell me that there's like 100,000 of them that are being dismissed because they just don't need them. I'm struggling with where that good unemployment number comes from, because it almost makes me wonder, is it made up so everybody doesn't know what it is? Or, I mean, because I have a hard time believing we have good unemployment number right now. So I'd like to know, Gary, you first on that. You've seen this many times. What's your opinion on, do you believe that unemployment number is that good? And if it is, why do you think it?
I don't think Gary's here.
We lost Gary?
He's not on the screen.
Oh, he's not on the screen. Yeah.
Very perceptive.
Gary, can you answer?
Angry about it.
Phil, that's you then.
The other guy with the beard. All right.
Yes, the other beard today. Well, there's 3 beards today.
Oh, there are. Look at that.
Mike's sporting his beard too.
Yeah. So some of that, I believe, is a lag in information. One thing we've been fighting with our expectations versus their expectations is that when the Fed is looking at certain material, they're looking at material that's probably the truth 3 months ago, not the truth like as of today.
Yeah.
So there is a lag in everything, which seems kind of ridiculous because we're in the computer age where, I mean, literally Taylor Swift can go to a football game and you know about it in 45 seconds, right? So, but we can't figure out what the numbers are, now. It takes 3 or 4 months, but it's just part of the beast that we're dealing with. I would say also they look at year over year and month over month. So it's not always just the top end number is this. It's what is the number versus what it was last year versus what we thought it would be. So again, it's all based on what they think it's going to be. So no matter what it does, if they thought it was going to be lower, but it's higher, then they react in one way to that.
Dallas, that there's no doubt that a lot of jobs are being created because of the virtual side of things, right? There are people that are working right now that have better jobs than they probably would have had, or they're able to do it because of the virtual increase that we've had over the last years post-COVID. Maybe, do you think that there's enough that's creating it, that it's offsetting all the downsizing? You've seen a lot of that. Why? What is it?
It's a good mystery. That's what it is. And I think jobs aren't as easy to track anymore, like you're saying. It's not like everyone just goes into an office, so it's really easy to forecast these things.
Yeah,
a couple of notes too.
Forecast from.
We're starting to see, employers demanding people come back into the office, right? And all those people that 2 years ago moved an hour away, hour and a half out, they're going to have to sell and move closer. So, that's also another factor we're seeing. But those guys that bought at the peak of the market, now they can't sell for what they thought they overpaid, and now rates are high, so it's hard for them to find a buyer. And with the Fed, they're running into a problem where the rates are so high that they're not going to be able to cover their debt or their interest payment, in the future, which would downgrade the credit rating of the country.
It's already been downgraded, right?
Yeah,
it's already been downgraded. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what do they do? Do they just say, well, we can't afford this, let's drop rates, and then, inflation continues to skyrocket? They don't really have a good answer for it. So I guess we're kind of in it for the ride.
Yeah. Mike, Robin works in, she's in a massive, I don't know how you describe the
Sugar
hospital mama. and the medical industry, but it's clearly a massive amount of employment for our country. I'm curious if she's seen, is it a subtraction, or in that particular area, is there an increase in jobs, or has it stayed the same? Because I wanted to ask you about this specifically, because I think that's a good.
It's kind of both.
Yeah,
it's kind of both, because with when COVID hit, they literally did, all the bids were being pulled. They didn't have any, they just didn't do any.
Right.
All the businesses that were like, well, we were going to do this, now we're not.
Right.
Because they didn't want the increase of the money. They didn't want to spend more. They didn't want to insure people that were about to lose their jobs. They were trying to save money. They just didn't bid them.
Right.
Then all of a sudden, they got an influx. It was just crazy. So they hired more people.
Right.
And then, or different divisions, or, whatever. So it's kind of both. When COVID hit, they're way beyond that now.
Yeah.
but they're very busy now.
Yeah, see, you illustrated the point I wanted. It's a crapshoot because I knew he was going to say that, and there are other industries that are like, well, no, we have to get rid of all these people. There's too many people here, so we're going to have to condense. And then Brent said the other side of it that's making this just mind-boggling, to where some of them are saying, well, now you have to come back. I'm like, well, which one is it? Are they coming back? Are they going to need the office space? Are they not coming back? Is it a modified version? Which my guess is that's what happens.
Mm-hmm.
They bring the key components back, or they say at least the majority of the week you have to be here. And then they modify the average person who works schedule to say you can have X amount of digital days. One thing is for sure, they are now able to, if someone has to be out for a particular reason, or they just can't get to the office, they all know that they can work from home if they have to. And I think what's going to adapt to it is that they're going to have them come in when they can. But if they have an excuse for not coming in, they're like, there's no reason why you cannot be doing that today with what you got going on. So I think they're caught in this. Do we downsize or do we not downsize? And I think that's why that unemployment number is just sticking there. And it was good for a while. And I just think it hasn't gotten out of whack because of that. I think it's had a good checks and balances. So in the most awkward way and the most weird way, it seems that it's staying positive, which is still, I still see a lot of friends that, Michael, how many, have you any friends that have been lately talking about they've been downsizing, or do you see it the other way, or has it been equal to you?
I mean, we downsized.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Right.
I mean, we did. And I think, everybody that I know, we all have around the same age kids. So they're all in college now. So everyone's talking like, well, I don't need a 3,800 square foot 2-story house.
Right.
It's like, why? They want a 2,800 square foot single story house. And they're like, we don't go upstairs as it is with the kids here.
So that's an interesting thing too. That's where I was going with that as well. COVID created we need extra space because all of us are going to be here and all of us are working. We're going to buy a house out further because we can get more land. But now you're seeing the age in let's face it, COVID, we're in almost 5 years of when COVID, or is it 4 years or so that COVID kind of started introducing itself. Some of those kids that are 14 are out of the house now, and the house was built to be bigger. So now some of them are saying, look, why do I have all this space? Now some of them who are 2 hours outside of any of the cities that we practice in are saying, hey, you need to be back closer. So it's really it's really almost a gamble right now. They have to feel or believe what their employer does. And I guess that also really kind of focuses in on what kind of job do you do? Is your job capable of being virtual or not? And what are the expectations?
But places like JP Morgan Chase, the huge building they had over there off 121 and 35, that's not a JP Morgan Chase building anymore. It doesn't say Chase anymore.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. By the way, that one of the confidential ones I was talking about was the same thing. That's exactly what happened. They said, well, we don't need all you people. So it's hard to see that, unemployment is a good number right now. I'm like, that's not what I see. So you got a perception issue. And that's the whole point of this particular show, is that we've got people who are misunderstanding an interest rate. And now you combine that they're misunderstanding, do they have a job? Are they going to have a job? Or are they not going to have a job? And you put those two things together and it gets you where we're at, a holding pattern. You have people sitting there waiting for, well, this will happen or this won't happen. That's not the best thing for us. We don't enjoy that. We don't enjoy a holding pattern. Now, we've said this for a while too. Unlike past downturns, we don't really consider this a downturn. We consider it a return to normalcy. The last 5 or 6 years are so stupid. It's so dumb how it ever got that way. So we've never had a market that peaked like that and then actually returned to normal. Usually it was like, hey, it just crashed and now we got to get it to come back up.
But will we ever see the actual normal again, where you can buy a Suburban for less than $100,000.
Yeah. See,
Why would you want to?
You know, I mean,
that's
Well,
the,
that bubble's gone.
because well, here's a question, and I heard this yesterday: is the influx of cars at auctions that because people can't make the payments anymore. They bought a $120,000 car at 6% interest or whatever they bought it. They can't make the payment.
So look, that was the other thing I heard. You know, I've heard other people that are on that backside say, "Hey, look, there's a lot of foreclosures that are coming up, a lot of missed payments." I'm like, well, then how is unemployment so damn good right now? I mean, is it that they're all overspent and this boom's waiting to happen, and then one day it goes from 2.3 to 8.9? I mean,
well,
but they still have their jobs, but they're realizing this $900 car payment is
stupid.
They can't do it, and it's a lease.
Well, I mean, just for example, where I'm at, you know, gas is really high out here. You know, I mean, you're looking at $6 now for regular. You know, so to fill my truck up, I'm looking at about, you know, $180, $190, and all that stuff, you know, just adds up. So if you've got somebody that bought a house, you know, earlier this year, and they're at a 6.5%, 7% interest rate, they probably have a $4,000, $4,500 a month house payment. If there's any hiccup in their income, they're not going to be able. You can't easily just make up that payment, right? It's not a $1,500 a month payment to easily make up. So I think next year, if there's any downturn in the economy, you're going to see a lot of people, and they won't have the equity because they just bought. So, you know, that's going to be something interesting.
Well, so if we go
and
into
same with houses,
the rates.
Same with houses. I mean, people that are buying a house right now, and the housing is coming down, or they bought a house 9 months ago, and the prices are starting to come down, but the rates are so high now.
Yeah,
you know, it's hard to. You got to lower the price, and now they're upside down in their house. They're way upside down in their cars.
Yep.
It's not a topic or a problem we've had in the last.
It's not. No.
I'm used to it because we saw that. I mean, I started in a market in the late 90s, early 2000s that was predictive of that. And in 2008, I absolutely saw it. And then even again in 2015. So I've seen it, but it's different right now. It's a different type of species that we're looking at, because it's like an unidentified strand, because it's not the way we've done this before. There are different variables that are affecting the market in a different way, and that becomes very difficult to analyze when you start saying, well, this could happen or that could happen. So yeah, it's funny. Mark was our producer showing the titles as we were going through, and I knew I was going to do this topic a couple of days ago, but I only really labeled it this morning, and I laughed when I did it. But now that we're going through it, I'm like, that title is perfect for this session. It is the stupidity of this thing. It's stupid in many ways. It's stupid that, you know, someone would buy the type of car that they did. Now they're like, oh, now it's like they didn't predict that can happen, or I'm doing fine right now, but one hiccup and I'm in disaster. It is stupid. If you really look at it, the game of analyzing an interest rate is a very stupid thing. Phil, I mean, you know this more than anybody. The other stupidity of the interest rate, and it's not the stupidity specifically of it, but it's the mentality behind it. And it all comes back into truth in lending and Reg Z. Everybody sits there and talks about how my rate's this or that. I'm like, there are 1,000 things you can do if you're concerned about your rate. You know, you can buy it down. You can, you know, do an ARM. It's amazing to me how many people say, oh, the rate's high. I'm like, that is a fixable problem depending on how you want to look at things. So talk a little bit about that, because sometimes some of our agents take this and send it to their clients and say, hey, look, I tried to tell you, you know, this same thing, but you didn't seem to understand. Tell them that it's not just because it's a 7% rate or 7.5%. There are tools that we can fix. It's really, how do you want it served to you? You know, I mean, how do you want it served?
Well, it's the cost of whatever you want to do. I mean, you know, I think the idea of what I tell people is, as we get higher and higher and higher, I do believe at some point there will be some relief. You know, and I think a lot of lenders are doing this, but for instance, I just know our policy is we'll give you a 5-year window where we'll pay all your lender fees. We'll give you $1,000 towards refinancing to help you refinance into a better rate when they do come down. Because while they might not get down to 4.5 or 3.5, I do think they will come down and we'll see some relief at some point. It's just, what's the magic sauce? When does that happen?
And does it stay there?
Right. And so, if you can afford your house at 7 or 7.5% for the short term might be a year or two, short term might be 3 years. I thought it would be 6 months. Maybe it's not 6 months. It just depends. Then don't spend the extra money to buy down the rate. Then wait for it. Then spend way less money and buy down the rate at that point. All likelihood in our area, your house is going to appreciate over that time. And so your house might be worth more money. It might help you in that process. Cost you nothing out of your pocket. But if you're heavily concerned right now with the interest rate and you have the money, correct, you can buy down the rate. ARMs are a little different because of the volatility of the market. I haven't seen any ARMs that I've seen that are really worth.
That's right. We talked about that because I made the assumption that, which I hate that effing word, and I tell people to never use it, and of course I use it. I've been under the assumption because of when I started, that was a very favorable option. But you're right, though. The rates they're not like they used to be with those ARMs. They're actually not that far off from the market one, correct? Yeah.
And, the only place, Lord strike me down for sending you somewhere else. But the banks are the only place I'd probably look at an ARM right now logistically. I mean, the thing is, it's going to cost you points in general to get into an ARM.
Like I said,
if you're paying points anyways, why don't you just pay points and bring your rate down? Either way is kind of the way I look at it. And then at least if you're stuck, you're not stuck in something that will get really higher on you. You're stuck in something that you already feel is a little high. But
you can get it closed in less than 3 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unfortunate, but at some point people have to you have to ask yourself the question is, do you need the Suburban at $100,000? Or can you get by with the Blazer at 60? Do you need the house that's $800,000, or can you get by with the house that's just as big that's $400,000?
My bigger conversation lately has been, and I say it a lot, but the more I say it, the more I believe it, because with the agents that we deal with, if their concern is they have to maybe get out of real estate because they can't afford fees or something, a lot of times I get kind of personally angry on the inside. I'm like, I got no problem with someone not having money or quitting, for the right reasons. But the fact that you don't have money, but you're at Starbucks and all day, every day, and Chick-fil-A every week, I'm like, and you look at the credit card that is way over balanced. I'm like, I have a hard time with you saying it's this when it's really that. If that behavior was curbed, this wouldn't be an issue. And, and you're talking, it's one thing to talk about putting money somewhere else. When you're talking about your house, though, that's the one I wouldn't screw with. That's just the one I'm like, well, why are you messing around with that one versus the rest of them? They always have an excuse. I'm like, there are other habits that could have been cut out.
Well, it's funny you mentioned credit card debt, because look at those percentage rates, and you tell me how you feel about your 7% interest rate on your house now.
How many applicants do you get that have credit card debt? I mean, I got to think it's the majority of them. I mean, I really do, or at least a high percentage.
Well, I know we hit $1 trillion for consumer debt for the first time, which that's something else to be aware of.
Yeah. And some people are using refinances to get rid of that debt. Like they're actually taking the higher loan interest rate because, when you owe $30,000 of credit card debt or something.
But they're tying it to their house.
They are, but your house in our area at least appreciates. So it's very area generated. Like I wouldn't do that necessarily in Detroit, but like in DFW, where in 2 years your house is probably gonna be worth a lot more money. I mean, and I know it's on a downward trend for like the last month or so, but in general, if you look at that chart,
only on downward trend because it was so ridiculously high. I mean, that's right. What I'm telling people. The value of their home is very good right now.
What do you guys think about leverage that cash buyers are going to have now with these rates being as high as they are?
You're asking us, me and Mike, in general?
Yeah, in general.
No. I'll let Mike say it first. I'll tell you my vividly blunt opinion of that in a minute, but I'll let Mike say it first.
I mean, personally,
Robert's on
when is a cash buyer not have the advantage?
Yeah. But
I mean, honestly, I mean, 2 years ago you had 4 cash offers on a house, and you just kind of picked the one that had the most favorable 2 or 3 terms that they could. But now, I mean, someone who's looking up an interest rate, they're not going 100 over asking with a 7% interest rate. I mean, they're putting
qualified.
all their money down.
Yeah.
So cash buyer, I mean, when have they not had the big advantage?
Yeah, so that's right, and I agree with that. What I see happening, and I've been pretty vocal about it. I think it was already about to happen last year until the market did cool off, and I don't think it was coincidence. I think they all saw it too, and they go, "We better back this off, or we're basically going to have a country where no one who has any cash can't buy anything." We had several buyers last year that made 250 plus, which is a very good income for most people, and we could not get them in a house. And y'all, that is not the American way. It has always been and always will be the foundation principle of this country, that home ownership is something very special. And when you start having people, those programs were designed, especially the FHA loans, they were originally designed because the United States government realized that most of its people did work, had decent jobs, had decent credit, but they had high debt. And a lot of the earlier qualification terms would prevent someone in that situation from owning a home. Well, the United States government, and trying to coincide with the American dream, said that's not right. If someone makes their payments just because they have high debt, they should even more so be able to get a house because they do pay their debt. And that is the initial base of the FHA loan, was to allow a more flexible debt ratio. Well, that was a huge move many years ago to protect the American dream, to where the person who did make even as low as $35,000 a year could own a home if everything was in a perfect situation. Well, now you fast forward today, and Mike's right. Cash is always going to be better. Always has, always will be. But now you have these people that are teaming up together. They become syndicates, and now they become even more powerful. And it was bad enough that an individual had enough cash to go buy houses or push somebody else out of a house. But now that you have groups of them pulling it together to where they're blocking almost anybody. So you see this at the auctions a lot. You go to the county auctions like the first Tuesday of the month or whatever. That used to be where anybody could go and purchase a house if they had enough money, and get some type of investment. Today, almost any market that you go into, there's 2 or 3 JVs in there that have pulled together, and there ain't nobody that's going to be able to overbid them. You're starting to have a very select few corner who buys the real estate. And when you start having that type of issue, you start once again coordinating the wealth into a few people's hands, and that they own it and everybody else rents. And it's my opinion, and I'd like to think I have a little bit of street cred for as long as I've been in this and with my initial background before this, but it's my opinion they're just not going to let it happen. I think at some point the government's going to come in and they're going to do just like they did with the HUD homes. They had the same problem with the HUD homes about 15 or 20 years ago. For those of you who don't know, HUD homes were created. HUD homes are the foreclosed FHA and VA nodes. And the program was created so that someone could buy a discounted home that was a first-time home buyer, because they felt that was a great way to make up for the fact that it was defaulted on and giving back, which that was true. That was a great program. But then you have greed set in, and I'm not going to be hypocritical. I bought several HUD homes back at that time frame, and God knows how many friends and clients I've had that have done it. And I think at that point it was fine because there were so many. But when the market narrows down and there's not so many, You cannot have only a few people buying the property. So what the government did years ago with HUD is they started, when they put those bids out, they started saying, hey, look, for the first 30 days, no investor. It has to be someone who is going to live in that home. And I think they even said for at least a year. And that promoted the people that were having trouble. They were able to buy. I truly believe if this trend continues where cash is constantly winning every home, it's only going to be a matter of time before some type of politician in some type of state, if not from the federal level, says that can't keep happening. That cannot keep happening. Those people, they're welcome to invest, but the people of this country first have to be the ones to have a place to live, and then the investment comes in. And being an investor years ago, and even representing tons of investors, especially with as many agents as we have, I still believe that's the way that should be. I don't think it's right that an investor has the first choice when someone cannot have a place for their kids to grow up in. I just don't believe it. It's not the American way. I don't think anybody believes it's the American way. And I think even the people that do it, they don't look at it like that unless somebody tells them, hey, look, that's just a tad greed there. Just a tad bit of greed that you're buying all that stuff up. And these people have to rent because they make good money, but they don't make as much as you. You know, our system was never designed.
And they're basically wanting rents to go up now.
They do. They do. I
They
mean,
need them to go up.
yeah. And, you know, and you if you look at the, and I'm going to be very neutral with this conversation. But if you look at the amount of foreign purchase property and land right now, it is overwhelming. It is overwhelming how many foreign, and that's not, it doesn't matter what country, or foreign versus domestic that are able to own a home. You have a lot of foreign investors in here that are taking and buying up that property when the person that lives in this country can't buy one. That's going to be an issue at some point. Somebody's going to put their foot down and say, look, that's not the way this was ever designed. So I don't know when that happens, but I do believe if the trend keeps up where we see every time someone purchases a home, it's cash-based versus lending, I just don't think they allow that very long. I just don't
No,
see
but I'm also thinking that somebody selling, you know, if they're at a certain price point and there's not any buyers for them, you know, those cash buyers are going to be able to come in because the rates don't affect them and lowball them too.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, so I was thrilled about everything you said except the last part, not because you said it, but for the actual belief of it. That's the good part, is that if they do have trouble, then we would welcome a cash buyer. That's where the system balances itself. We're like, great, we need that. But then you said the part that sucks. And it goes back to the first part too of the whole conversation, is that then their greed sets in and they lowball them. I'm like, well, now you're taking, now the purpose is going away. Now you're just holding them hostage. You know, there's a lot of kicking a person down when they're down in this country. A lot of people that take advantage of somebody when they're down. And it's a hard line to balance. You know, it really is. You want someone to make money on their money for investing. You can look at the other side. We're a capitalistic society. They should be able to do that, right? But if the result is from the American people not being able to have a home ownership, I don't think that one wins over time. You know, I think it becomes more of a struggle. Okay, I think that's gonna be a good point to cut this one off today. And we could talk about interest rates and the suffering and the stupidity of it for hours. And none of our episodes are ever designed for that. But I think the summary for today is very clear that rate, it can be looked at several different ways. You can continue to hope that it goes lower. But if your lower is 5%, I don't think your level of thinking is where it needs to be right now. I just don't see that happening. I really believe the best case scenario is 6 and got in maybe upper 5s. And even if it happens, I really believe it's only going to be triggered towards an election to where it's temporary. I just don't see us not being at 7 or 8%. I think that's where the government wants us to be. I think that's where the banks want us to be. And I think personally, And being a guy who sold a lot of real estate and has a lot of real estate people that work with him, I just think it's better to have that rate somewhere at the 7-8%. You know, it's great to end with that, because if you think a guy like me with the responsibility that I have, that centers around people buying houses, thinks it's good to be at 7 or 8%, then maybe that's something you should think about. If I'm sitting there saying that that's okay, you would think that I would be the first one to say, no, I wanted it 3% all day long. If I'm the one that's saying that, maybe that's something that we should start thinking about then, because maybe it's a clear sign that the experts in the industry are telling you, look, that's not the way it works. Maybe you need to get in line with everybody else and start understanding that too. I want to thank everybody for watching. Like I said, it's great to be back. You guys take the show, especially if you're a newer agent, you don't understand a lot of this, forward it on. If you are an existing agent and you have clients that are struggling with this, pass this on to them too. We always are going to plug our own stuff too. You know, if you're ever looking for a real estate broker that's looking for full-time, part-time agents and does the whole thing, you can go to joinswr.com. That is the company that we really run ourselves, and it's where most of this data comes from, is the interaction of our 185 agents in Texas and a lot of the East Coast as well. I want to thank all my guys, but especially Phil, for being a guest today. I always appreciate your time, buddy, and all your help for our particular group. And for the rest of you guys, we'll see you soon, probably more soon than you think, because we're going to do an episode right after this that goes a week later or so. But you guys take care. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you soon. See ya.
This was a Lunatic Digital production. Visit lunaticdigital.com for all your digital needs.